people used to ask me, what is the biggest impact of people on the oceans? And, for years, I was quite clear that it had been hunting and fishing. And we have had a profound impact on the structure of ocean ecosystems over a period of hundreds to even 1,000 years. And that has completely transformed whole places, to the extent that, places like the UK, we now don't even recognize some of the changes that we have caused, and people look at the sea and think that this is how it should be. It's in its kind of natural state. Well, it's far from it. And I think one of the big changes that is exciting in ocean science is our new appreciation of how the ocean has changed. That appreciation has not yet been fully understood by the general public, by some parts of the science community, by decision makers. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we have in the science and communications world at the moment, is to bring other people along to this shared understanding of where we're at. So I think, keeping on the theme of hunting and fishing, one of the big changes in the last couple of decades has been the exploitation of the high seas. And those areas in international waters have seen very rapid increases in fishing effort over time. And what we are being kind of stunned into disbelief by almost is the extent to which we have depleted ocean megafauna. So, either the megafauna, which is the direct target of fishing, like things like Pacific bluefin tuna, or megafauna that is collateral damage in the course of fishing operations, such as leatherback turtles. In both those cases, we've seen 97% declines from their unimpacted population levels. And just this year, a Nicaraguan beach was reported to have received no leatherback turtles at all coming to lay their eggs. So that the speed of the decline has been utterly surprising to us. And we now face a moment where, if we don't act with great urgency, we will see an increasing number of these species being lost completely, and that would be an absolute tragedy. When I'm asked now, though, what is the biggest impact on the oceans, I think it's hard to avoid talking about climate change. And I think, Dan mentioned some of the effects, but I think, the ways in which those effects are manifesting themselves is becoming increasingly integrated. So the warming of the sea has been thickening this kind of surface layer of less dense water, which sits on the top of the ocean. So it's like the ocean has two layers, and that surface layer is like a lid that sits on top of colder, denser, more nutrient-rich water below. And the surface has all the sunlight, but few of the nutrients. They sink down into the deeper ocean. And so when you start thickening that layer, you reduce the mixing of nutrients back to the surface, which leads to lower productivity. And we understand that as well, that the ocean megafauna, which we've been busily depleting, is important in bringing nutrients back up from the deep sea into that shallow layer, and therefore fertilizing the ocean, improving its ability to take up carbon dioxide and sequester it away in the deep ocean. So we have these interactive effects. One kind of surprising thing that I think people that I talk to about the oceans find curious is that we can measure the warming of the sea by the amount of oxygen that is being released by it, because warm water holds less oxygen than cooler water. So, what we're seeing is this kind of large-scale release of oxygen to the atmosphere, which is reducing the amount of oxygen in the ocean, reducing the living space for many of the big high oxygen demanding animals, tuna, swordfish, sharks, etc. And by squeezing those animals into a narrower layer of the ocean, we're also making them more vulnerable to capture, etc. So that these effects are now incredibly integrated, and we're seeing ocean ecosystems changing fast and in ways that were unexpected and unimagined just 10 or 15 years ago. I think what we're also understanding now is that we need a complete step change in the way that we approach ocean management. And one of the things which I think is emerging as an exciting opportunity for us is to expand the area of ocean that is protected, not just protected in a kind of nominal way, but which is highly or fully protected from extractive and damaging uses. And those areas offer us great opportunities to slow the rate of climate change by promoting processes in the ocean that take up carbon dioxide, for example, and to ameliorate the effects of climate change. So things like revegetating coasts with wetland habitats like mangroves and salt marshes and seagrass beds is increasingly being seen as an important way to both take up carbon dioxide in greater quantities, but also to protect those coasts in a dynamic way that will help coastal societies cope and adapt to rapid climate change. Now, none of these actions will actually prevent climate change, but they will buy us a bit more time to be able to do something about bringing down greenhouse gas emissions. One of the kind of consequences of all those multiple ways in which the oceans are being affected by climate change is to reduce productivity of the sea and reduce, therefore, the productivity of fisheries. And we have the opportunity to counter that effect by increasing the amount of protection, which will rebuild populations depleted by historical effects of fishing and contemporary effects, and thereby render them more productive, which will offset some of the decline in productivity that we're expecting as a result of climate change, and render those populations much more resilient to the negative consequences of multiple stresses by increasing their ability to reproduce their way through these periods of adverse ocean conditions. So I think we see now increasingly clearly that we are going to have to align goals for nature conservation with climate change mitigation and adaptation. And if we don't greatly raise our ambitions for ocean protection, then we are going to fail both to protect biodiversity on the one hand and to address the adverse consequences of climate change on the other. And really, you know, we need to be using nature to help us build the planetary resilience that we need and get ourselves out of this deep, deep trouble that Dan was talking about.